Well, it's going to be a tremendous transfer of wealth in the next few years.
Hello, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're broadcasting the good news and bad news about money, and we're broadcasting from Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell. And right now, June, it's getting close to hell right now, but it's a dry heat. We have a very special show today, longtime friend, an authority in his field, most respected, and a man I listen to. He and I have shared the stage in many parts of the world together, and I go to learn from this man. This man is Doug Casey. He's the author of Crisis Investing, and he's known as the International Man. And every time I talk to Doug, I've got to ask him, where in the world are you? So Doug, welcome to the Rich Dad Show.
Thanks, Robert. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I flew up from Uruguay, where I am about half the year, either Uruguay or Argentina, last week, and I'm now on the shores of the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia.
Good for you. Good for you. Anyway, I love South America and the people there. Anyway, I'm going to get back to work here. What I was saying to Rick Rule, another person I respect immensely, it's kind of the theme song of people like you and me. We're kind of hard asset guys. I like gold and silver. I don't trust my government that much. And I don't save money. I save gold and silver because it's liquid. In other words, if I need cash, I just come out of silver or gold fast, and I'm into cash. And I was talking to Rick about why do people hang on to cash when I think, was it you that said they're guaranteed, their inflation is at 7% and they're paying you 3% or something? Why would you hang on to it?
Inertia on the part of most people, and lack of knowledge on the part of most people. The U.S. dollar is an IOU nothing on the part of the U.S. government, and the U.S. government itself is bankrupt at this point.
Yes.
We're headed for really, really serious trouble. And I do exactly what you do, Robert. When it comes to saving, as opposed to investing or speculating, when it comes to saving, I buy gold coins and silver coins, put them aside, and
forget it.
Forget it. Exactly. They'll be there if I need them or want them for some reason.
I remember, Rick, Doug, when I was about 25 years old, silver was $50 an ounce. Today it's $35 an ounce, or approximately for a coin. And I'm going, why don't you buy more of it? People go, no, I'd rather have the US dollar. I'm going, holy mackerel. See, my opinion on the speculation side, I think silver is most, and by the way, we're not an investment company. Richard doesn't make recommendations. But right now I'm looking at silver and my teeth are getting soft, going, holy mackerel. What an opportunity. But people rather hang on to the dollar.
Yeah, I completely agree. A little bit of history on silver that you're very familiar with as well. But back in the late 60s, before Johnson took it out of dimes, quarters, and half dollars, silver was 90 cents an ounce. And it ran up to $50. And the last time it was a real bargain was in about 2001, when it was trading at $4.25 an ounce, which is to say cheaper than it was back in the late 60s. Now it's about $22. And I think it's an excellent bargain. It's not a freebie. It's not a giveaway anymore, but it's a great place to put aside capital. Better than gold for upside, I think, at the moment.
Right. And I said, I have friends with millions in cash and they don't need the cash. I said, why don't you put some of it into silver and gold coins? No. They'll put them in long-term treasuries. I go, are you nuts?
Well, it's going to be a tremendous transfer of wealth in the next few years. I think from the people that are doing what we recommend, capital comes to us, and it's going to leave people that are doing conventional things. We live in unconventional times, so no. I completely agree with you. And I guess both of us speculate in small mining stocks, which most people don't even know exist and aren't aren't something for most people because they're so volatile and it's such a specialist area, and it takes a lot of specialized knowledge for them. But that's a leverage way to play gold and silver.
Yeah. So, like when I was younger, when we were all younger, there was it James Brown, the singer? He was called the Godfather of Soul. I
Yeah.
sometimes refer to you and Rick Rule as the Godfather of Gold, because I look to you for not so much why to buy gold and silver, but you guys are macro guys. I mean, you are traveling the world constantly. You see what's going on. And I talk to most people, they were born in Scottsdale and they'll die in Scottsdale. That's all they ever see.
Yeah, that's true. That's true of most people. Actually, I had an opportunity just last week, believe it or not, to go to Equatorial Guinea
Wow.
with a few friends. Very few outsiders have been there. I passed on the opportunity for a number of reasons, but I like crazy countries like that because I like on level playing fields. Uh, if I had gone to Equatorial Guinea and I was looking, crazy place, but if I'd gone there and I was looking for opportunities, I'd be on an on level playing field where I'd have more capital, more knowledge, better connections uh, than most of the people there, which would give me an advantage. Here in the United States, I'm just one of 300 million other people.
Right. And you've went long. Oh, I don't know. You still say it, but a while ago you said if you were 25, you'd go to Africa.
I would, for just the reason that I just said. Uh, I like to be a commodity that's unusual and in demand. And the fact is that a young guy who's got something on the ball, who has something to offer, something to say.
Or woman, or LBGT. Would be politically correct here, Rick.
Well,
I
not
walked,
not not
we'll
not
walk
too
front.
not too politically correct. I hope, but it's possible in most of these countries in Africa, if you have something to say and something to offer, uh, to be sitting down with the president within a month,
Right.
and that opens up other opportunities, because unfortunately, most of these countries in Africa are very, very political, and
Right.
things are uh, they're less commercial than we are here. You've got to have connections in Africa, but still, that said,
Anyway,
if I was a young guy, yes, I'd go to Africa.
yes. So let me quick question: how did you get into this business? You're known as the international man. You travel the world. You're basically a soldier of fortune. That's what I would call you. So,
Well, that's why I decided to get into the novel writing business, Robert. It's that a lot of people will read novels that won't read nonfiction books. And my first novel is called Speculator, about a young guy just out of high school that gets lucky in a mining stock, decides to go to West Africa to check it out, and gets involved in a bush war with boy soldiers and all the rest of it.
right.
So this is why Jim Rogers, I don't know if you've had Jim on your show or not.
Yes. Good
Have you?
friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of his books is called Adventure Capitalist, and I'm very sympathetic to that.
Good.
Uh, the idea of sitting behind a computer screen all day is it's much more fun to get out in the field and meet people.
Yeah, I
And
don't know how people can sit there and trade the S&P, going, holy mackerel, get a life,
yeah.
So where were you born and what twigged you to get out of wherever you were born and travel the world? I mean, what was the spark?
Well, I was born in Cicero, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago,
Yeah.
and basically grew up in and around Chicago. And I made a mistake after high school to go to college, something I don't recommend for people, but it took me to Washington, D.C. I went to misallocated 4 years of time and a bunch of money at Georgetown University. Um, and I spent my junior year at Georgetown abroad in Switzerland, traveled all around Europe, and realized that the US may think it's the center of the world, but we're not.
No.
Uh, America is only 4% of the world's population, and just a bit more of that of the land area. So I think you owe it to yourself to see all that you possibly can. And in fact, I think the last book, nonfiction book that I'm going to write, I'm in process of writing now, is tentatively called Renaissance Man, intended for younger people, how to be, do, and have everything that you want in the world, what you should do with the time that you normally spend in college, drinking beer and chasing girls. Nothing wrong with drinking beer and chasing girls, but you can do that anywhere. You don't have to spend a lot of money and sit in back of a desk uh, absorbing twaddle from left-wing professors. So I have to get that editorial in there today because the higher education system, in fact, the entire education system in the United States is in good measure responsible for the corruption of young
Amen.
people today, wokeism.
FYI is, as we speak right now, last summer, I spent the 7 weeks training, teaching at Barrett Honors Program at Arizona State University. So I brought all my entrepreneurial friends. I brought my oil guy in, my water guys. I brought my cattle guys in. The real, we invest in commodities. So I brought my real capitalists in there to teach them about how we trade something outside of paper. And my I'm so hardcore. I'm said, if you can print it, I don't want it. That's how hardcore I am.
That's fantastic, Robert. And a young person, instead of going to college for a year, should spend a month taking a course, learning how to build a house, spend a couple of months on a ranch, learning how to deal with beef cows, spend another couple of months on a farm, learning how to grow things. I mean, that's what people should be doing during their college years.
Wait, Doug, so 1 second. So the students were ecstatic. 37 professors came after me.
That's fantastic, Robert. Absolutely. Totally agree with you on that.
The fight still goes. It's almost a year. They're still attacking. They're Marxists. I mean, they're hardcore Marxists. So that's what but I want to get back to the reason I want to, we can talk about gold, silver, and all this stuff in CBDC. But I like your philosophy because the school I went to school for a whole year traveling the world and on merchant ships. And you can't come home, if that makes sense to you. I came home with high school friends, and they were still high school friends, smoking pot, drinking, chasing girls, surfing. And they don't grow up.
There's no education like getting out on your own, on the road, meeting different people every day in different places, instead of sitting behind a desk listening to what I would call mostly unqualified people talk about irrelevant or even destructive things. So we're on the same page totally.
Amen, amen, amen. Let me tell you one quick war story. One of my first stops was in Vietnam. I'm 19 years old on a bomb carrier, Victory ship, carrying 500, 750, and 1,000-pound bombs to Cam Ranh Bay. And I'm walking around. This guy says, "You want to meet a Viet Cong?" What?
So did he introduce you?
He and I sat down and had a beer. It was a lot better than talking to my professor. And he explained to me what they were fighting for. Do you know what I mean, Doug? That was priceless. Priceless. And he was just as committed as I was. And then 3 years later, I came back as a Marine gunship pilot for helicopters. I was going to fight him. But, that's real life. And those are, when I heard you say you would, if you were 25, you'd go back to Africa, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, because a lot of our audience are young men right now, probably under 50. And they're kind of wondering what's happening to their life, and should they invest in crypto or S&P or go to school, whatever it is. But there's a whole world out there, Doug, and it's one of the most exciting times in world history. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it is. Also a dangerous time of world history, but unquestionably, you have to go out and do stuff. And by doing things, it will hopefully allow you to have things. And by having things, it'll give you the time to be things, read more books, things of that nature. So it's a circle between be, do, and have, the three most important verbs in any language. And it starts with do. You have to
Right.
get out there and do things. Get out on the road.
Hey, Doug, it's time for a break. When we come back, we're going more into it. But I really wanted to get that out because we have a lot of young men and young women right now who are wondering what's going on in the world. Where do I go? Well, go, as you say, go into the world. It's an exciting time, but exactly as a dangerous time. We'll be right back.
Today's show is sponsored by Gold Alliance. If you're concerned about high inflation, looming recession, a troubled banking system, or out-of-control spending in Washington, this is an important message to hear. Because the fact is, during every major crisis in U.S. history, many of those who failed to prepare watched their savings, investments, or retirement funds go down, while many with the foresight to own gold helped preserve their purchasing power. Gold even made some folks richer. Now we're facing several major crises at once, and experts say we may soon face even more economic trouble. So please don't wait. Learn the simple way you can diversify with gold and put yourself on the road to financial peace of mind, even in uncertain times. The new free 2023 Gold Guide from our friends at Gold Alliance can show you how. Just visit www.freegoldguide.com/Robert or call 1-800-473-4585. Republican Governor and conservative commentator Mike Huckabee says Gold Alliance is the only gold provider he recommends to his friends and family. Find out why and visit freegoldguide.com/Robert or call now at 1-800-473-4585. Robert recently tweeted that we're in the biggest bubble in world history, and may God have mercy on us all. After two of the largest U.S. banks collapsed in March, many believe a widespread banking crisis is coming. For years, Robert warned us to invest in real assets like gold, silver, and Bitcoin for protection against financial storms like the one we're experiencing. Today, brilliant investors are adding to his list by investing in the $1.2 trillion diamond market with the world's first and only regulator-approved diamond commodity. Each diamond standard coin contains a mathematically identical value of ethically sourced diamonds with a unique electronic signature, so it can be traded instantly. Forbes says that the diamond standard coin inherits the best features of gold and Bitcoin. And when Diamond Standard eventually offers an ETF, diamond prices could rise 300 to 500%, just like they did with gold. The Financial Times says diamonds are worth more than silver, platinum, palladium, and rhodium combined. It's a neglected resource that investors couldn't touch, as each diamond is different. Until now. And just like Robert says, there is gold everywhere. Most people are not trained to see it. See this brilliant investment at buydiamondstandard.com. That's buydiamondstandard.com.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert. Get back at the Rich Dad Radio Show. We're having a longtime friend I look up to and respect. He's Doug Casey, author of Crisis Investing. He also, what are some of the other books you've written on the nonfiction? But you kind of tell the story of the facts via fiction, right?
Well, the first book I wrote was The International Man. I wrote that in 1977. And talking about Africa, I was in Rhodesia, which is now called Zimbabwe,
Right.
During the war that they had there, and went to a publisher in Harare that was then called Salisbury. We got along, and he published my first book, The International Man, in Rhodesia. It became the largest selling book in the history of Rhodesia. That's a record that's never going to be broken
Wow.
because the country
Wow.
doesn't exist anymore. But that's the kind of thing that you can do in a country like that.
Yeah.
So
I hope you're getting paid. I hope you're getting paid in Zim dollars, did you?
well, back then they were Rhodesian dollars, and they were actually worth more than the US dollar.
Right.
It used to be a very nice country. And
Rhodesia was the richest country around in Africa at one time.
absolutely. It was a delightful place, but it's been totally devastated over the years. It's too bad. But I've been back probably 4 or 5 times since those days. In fact, one of the things that I almost did in Rhodesia, there was a hotel that was built like a castle. It was a castle, actually, that was built right on the border with Mozambique. And during the war, I could have bought it for $85,000. And that would have included a 9-hole golf course, a coffee plantation, and about 100 hectares of beautiful land right there in the Vumba Mountains on the border. And I thought about it because I actually had $85,000 back then. But if I bought it, it would have changed my whole life. But here's what happened. That was back in 1978. Later, when I went back in 1986, that place had changed hands for $13 million. So it's possible if you buy when blood is literally running in the streets. I didn't do it. Should have, could have, would have changed the whole course of my life if I had. I could have sold it to whoever bought it for $13 million later on. So opportunities like that, if you stick your nose into places, turn up.
And the thing I want to talk to you about is today we're in this world of turmoil, and we don't make recommendations and all this stuff, but I see massive opportunity. Like like I look at silver. It used to be $50 today; it's under 30. And I would buy that. The CBDC. What are your thoughts on that? Central bank digital currencies.
It's going to be a complete disaster, and it's all the more reason why you should have capital that's important to you, your savings in the form of physical gold and silver. These CBDCs are digital money. And of course, the average American will think it's great. He can do everything on his iPhone, on his digital phone, but they'll be able to debit or credit your account on your phone, depending on whether they like you or they don't like you, or depending on what they think the economy needs or doesn't need. So this is, money is the most, money represents everything you want to have and provide for others, everything you want to do in the future. You can't do it without capital. You need money. And when the government controls your money, not you, but the government, it means that you're essentially being turned into a serf. Now, here in the US, we're serfs with a high standard of living, but I don't like being a serf under any circumstances, low standard of living or high standard of living.
So again, what would you recommend people invest in? I mean, not that we do it, but just what are your suggestions? What are you looking at these days? Well,
investing is becoming, in my opinion, harder and harder because the stock market is going up and down like an elevator with a lunatic at the controls because of the huge amounts of money, trillions of dollars that are being created by the Fed and pumped into the economy, which is creating all kinds of distortions on value. One of the things, so it's mainly a matter of, I like the idea of investing because the idea with investing is you plant a seed and you grow an ear of corn and you create real wealth by investing. But that's becoming harder and harder today. So we're moving into the world of the speculator, and a speculator is different from an investor. A speculator is somebody that tries to capitalize on politically caused distortions in the market. If we lived in a free market society, which we don't, a speculator would be out of business because there wouldn't be a lot of distortions to capitalize on. But today there's plenty of them. One thing that I'm doing now, I'll just mention this. This is, I don't know if you've looked at these things or not, Robert, but the shipping industry, very important industry. I mean, everything that comes from oil,
Supply chain.
grains,
Yeah.
everything, it's all shipped. And the average shipping company, whether we're talking about bulk carriers or container ships or oil tankers, the average shipping company's stock is down over 90% from its
Down.
previous peak.
Down.
And I don't like ETFs for a lot of reasons, but in areas like this, I like the diversification between a bunch of shipping companies. And it's possible to get in between 10 and 20% in current yield from shipping company ETFs today.
Yield?
Very small, very illiquid, risky, but I'm happy to collect 10 to 20% on a depressed stock that there's plenty of reason to believe that in the future, it'll go back up to even half of what it was in the past,
Yep.
which would be
As I said, that was my background. I went to U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in New York, so I drove ships.
Well, you'd be ideally qualified to investigate further in these individual companies. Have you looked at them recently?
No, but once I got off my ship, and I used to fly for the Marine Corps. Once I shut the things down, I was out. I said, I'm going to get out of here. But that's what Records is talking about is supply chain. You know what I mean? It's everything today. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, the world is very international. I mean, it used to be that we made everything that we needed or wanted right here in the U.S. But now most things are imported from other places in the world, and most of it comes in on ships. So the fact that shipping companies are down 90% from their previous peak, typically selling, this is unbelievable, selling at 2 or 3 times earnings and these huge dividend yields, tells me that we have a rare speculative opportunity. It's a lot like the first big hit that I think it's a lot like the first big hit that I ever made in the stock market was back in 1976. And at that time, I remember it exactly. It was August of 76. There were riots in Soweto, and everybody felt South Africa was going to collapse tomorrow morning.
Right.
And at the same time, gold had just fallen from $200 an ounce to $100 an ounce. And these mines looked like they were in double trouble for those reasons. Right. And short life, high cost mines, you could buy them, and I did, were had current yields of an unbelievable 50 or 60% on their market, 50 or 60% in current dividend yields. And from that point, the dividends went up, not down. Because normally a high dividend yield, of course, it's telling you they're about to cut the dividend. But I think the shipping industry may be in the same position as the gold mining industry in South Africa was back then.
I think also you're saying the same I talk about. It's chaos is opportunity. Do you know what I mean? And we're going to a very chaotic time right now, but you got to be smarter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, Argentina, which is where I live along with Uruguay for half of the year, they're experiencing chaos right now as we speak. It's close to being the cheapest country in the world. If you go into a restaurant in Argentina to buy a meal, I don't care what kind of meal you're talking about, but let's talk about a nice sit-down restaurant. It's going to cost you about a fifth to a quarter of what it costs here in the U.S. And I like going places where things are cheap.
Yeah, thank you.
It's opportunities. And the same is true of apartments in Buenos Aires. They're very cheap right now. Excellent
How's the safety?
speculation.
How's the safety?
Uh, Argentina is not like Venezuela. Uh, it's walking down the street. It's actually quite safe. You don't have to. I think you're much safer in Buenos Aires or any other Argentine city than you are in a comparable American city. Much safer. Much safer.
Buenos Aires is so gorgeous. God Almighty.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's a place that I think everybody should diversify themselves politically, because, as great as our financial risks are right now, I think our political risks are even greater.
Yes.
So that if you're in a position to, and you should be in a position to, you should diversify internationally and have a crib someplace else that's nice, where if the going gets tough here in the U.S. and politically incorrect and deplorable people such as you and I, you have a place to go. You don't want to live like a refugee.
Yep. Final word, really quickly. What do you think about the BRICS? A lot of people are talking about Russia, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, possibly Mexico, China, Japan. What are your thoughts on the BRICS nation and going on the gold standard?
The U.S. really shot itself in the foot by confiscating the assets of Russia, the government, and Russian people.
Right.
They told the world that if you have money in the U.S. dollar, U.S. banks, it can be taken away from you if we decide we don't like you. So that was the bell ringing to get out of the water and get out of the U.S. dollar. And the Russians and the Indians and the Iranians and the Chinese and everybody, they don't like to have to deal in the U.S. dollar. They'd rather. I think what they're going to do is they're going to go back to gold. They're going to come up with. They're going to, because they don't trust each other's currencies any more than they trust the U.S. dollar.
Right.
So I think we're going to see gold once again used as the international numeraire, and I think it's going to be at considerably higher levels than it is today.
Right. And so that's why I started with the song, On the Eve of Destruction. It's also the time for the biggest opportunities in world history. I wish I could go on and on with you, Doug, but I really appreciate your wisdom you pass on to the world. And you're always welcome back here on the Rich Dad Show.
Thank you, Robert. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.